Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
We didn't really worry about the other teams as much as we did last year. So basically we were just going as fast as we could at our own speed, which actually worked well. And I suppose that's what you learn from doing more and more races like that.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
You're going the wrong way! What? You're going the wrong way!
He says we're going the wrong way.
Oh, he's drunk. How would he know where we're going?
Yeah, how would he know? Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. Welcome to episode number 59 of the Dark Zone. Today we are joined by Team Fear Youth of New Zealand, Molly Spark and Fynn Mitchell, joined with their two teammates, Dean Stewart and Josiah Murphy, and had a great result at Godzone. I'll let them tell you all about it during the race itself. We are grateful that Molly and Fynn joined us for this episode. Alongside Molly and Fynn is their coach, Andy Magness, very active in the New Zealand racing scene, especially when it comes to youth racers. So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for joining us for the Dark Zone. We appreciate your time and your attention. If you like the Dark Zone and you want to spread the word about it, please head to your streaming platform of choice and click and like and review and add and spread the word. Big things on the way here for the Dark Zone, firming up some sponsors. We will be sharing those in the next few weeks, and we are delighted that you are here. Sit back and relax and enjoy Team Fear Youth. So, Fynn, where are you on your way to?
I'm on my way to Colic Bay, so pretty much we got that finished. Going diving.
Okay, so to finish, and what are you going to do there?
Diving. Dive for power, so abalone.
Okay, so you're going diving, right? So we're here in the northeast of America, and it's miserable, and it's crummy, and you're going diving. Very nice New Zealand. And how's the weather in New Zealand, everybody? You guys doing okay there, all of you?
It's like that.
It's like that. It's like that.
God.
Right. And so for our listeners at home, Fynn is currently flipped his camera around, and he's showing us the bucolic New Zealand landscape, the beach there, as he's on his way off to go abalone diving. We have Molly Spark. Molly is home in her house. I'm sure she's working on her university studies. She's not going to be out there roaming around. And we have Andy Magness, who is their coach. And we are joined today on the Dark Zone by repeat guests. Molly and Fynn joined us last year for Dark Zone number 30. Dark Zone number 30 for Team Fear Youth. They completed Godzone last year. What place did you come in last year, Molly? Do you remember?
We got unranked, but
that's right. You were unranked because you switched on the way through it. One of your lads had a really bad, was it his feet, his shins? His hip. Right. So you were unranked last year, right? And so then you raced Godzone again this year. And how did you guys do this year?
Yeah, we came seventh, so we're pretty stoked with that. So seventh place for a Fair Youth.
Excellent, very good. Now, for the listeners, so we're sitting here. Finn's currently in a car, bouncing through the landscape. One of his lads is over his right shoulder. What's your friend's name? Who's with you, Fynn?
Cody.
Right. And Finn's audio is going to be a little touch and go, so this may be a heavy Molly episode. Okay, Molly, you ready to carry us through all of this?
Yeah, no worries.
Very nice. And then Andy Magness is here. Andy, describe your role with Team Fear Youth.
My role with Fear Youth, I initially had nothing to do with them. I just put on events down here under the moniker of Fear Society, which is the Fiordland Endurance and Adventure Racing Society. It's just grassroots. We put on these events that are meant to be a lot lower cost and more accessible than like big adventure races like Godzone. And I initially met the three that aren't on the podcast, which are Zach, Josh, who are twins, and Josiah. And they came and started doing some of our Rogaine, our 6-hour Rogaine events in the Fiordland Bush and doing really well. We had another guy that's on the team, Dean Stewart, that came along and met them. And so that kind of became the core of this group that started doing our 48-hour adventure races and doing really well. And so they kind of got together and said, hey, what's the hardest thing we can do? And so they wanted to do Godzone. I started talking them through about that possibility. And Molly came on board because, there was a lot of hard people in Fjordland, but there weren't any hard women that we could find that were young. So we had to, we had to scour the country. And so Molly was, she basically, the boys had gone up and done a secondary schools adventure racing championship when they were in year 12, and they got second place. And Molly was on the only team that beat them. So naturally we were like, okay, so well, we know this girl's got to be really good because she beat these guys and they're really good. So yeah, we got in touch with Molly. Do you remember that, Molly?
I haven't heard this story. I didn't even know how you found me.
So Molly, you were being shadow recruited before you even realized it. They were recruiting you. Had no idea what's going on.
When we needed somebody, we were like, we need somebody that we think can do this and is going to be as fast as these guys. And yeah, Molly was the only one that we knew for sure, And so she jumped at the chance. And then Fynn actually got involved because Fynn was the son of another Godzoner, Glenn, who's a friend of mine and who's done a lot of our events as an adult, like he's my age, and he brought Fynn along when we did. I first met Fynn. We hosted a 1-day run across the Dusky Track, which is normally a 10-day tramp. It's like the hardest, established tramp in New Zealand. It's brutal, and we thought, let's do it. See if we can do it in a day, or 36 hours. And so Fynn was were you 13, Fynn?
Is this the Dusky?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was 13.
So Fynn was 13 and his dad brought him along, and they did it in about 36 hours. And that's only because Glenn thought that Fynn wasn't strong enough to do it, but it was really that Glenn didn't want to do it in 24 hours. Fynn was fine, right? He was just like, come on, Dad, we don't need to stop. And I remember having a conversation with Glenn when they needed last year, Dean, who was part of the team, couldn't do it. And so they needed to replace Dean for Godzone. And Fynn wasn't part of the team yet, but we were like, who can we get that's young? And I talked to Glenn and I said, look, he's ready. And Glenn was like, I don't know. It's Godzone. It's so hard. And I had no doubt. And he got in there and he just smashed it. It was like he was so strong the whole way. So. Well,
yeah. Last year when Fear Youth had their experience last year, and for the listeners, go back and check out episode 30. I mentioned that before. Fear Youth was doing fine in the race, and one of their teammates had a tough hip, and there were some people that were in and out. But I'm correct that last year that Molly and Fynn on the team last year, the two of you did the entire distance. Am I correct? The team was unranked because you exchanged members, but you guys were there from beginning to end on the entire experience, right?
Yeah. Me, Molly, and Josiah went through the whole race.
Now, Fynn, I've noticed that the car that you were in, by the way, everybody, Fynn is off diving, as I mentioned. Last year, Fynn did this while laying on the beach. So clearly life is rough in New Zealand for Fynn. I've noticed the car is stopped. Have you arrived at your diving location?
We have arrived at the diving location. Yeah.
Okay.
The
okay.
other boys just getting the wetsuits on.
Okay. I don't want to get in the way of your fun there. So we're going to keep you for 5 more minutes. Okay. And then we'll let you go dive.
No.
Are you sure?
I'm in no rush.
You're in no rush? Yeah. Okay. The abalone will wait. So very nice.
Yeah. The abalone will wait.
So folks who are home and who are listening to this, Godzone and everybody on the call, I wanted to please to point out any errors or corrections that are needed, but I think I have a pretty good understanding of this. Godzone is the premier adventure race in the world. It's an 8-day expedition level adventure race. It consisted of 12 separate stages with a priority on mountain biking, pack rafting, trekking, and Team Fear Youth came in 7th overall in that race. So last year they were unranked. They had some medical problems. This year they came in 7th overall. And it's great to have them to come back and talk about their experience a year later, because what I'm really curious about, and Molly, I'll throw this question to you first, and then Fynn, you can add on to it. The experience of racing Godzone last year, right? And by the way, for the people at home, I got to point this out. The 4 members on the team, Molly Spark is 19 years old. Fynn, are you 17 now, Fynn?
Yeah, I'm 17 now.
He's 17 years old now. Dean Stewart, 19 years old on the team, and Josiah Murphy was 19 years old on the team. Are all those ages correct?
Yeah.
Josiah's 20.
He's 20 now. Josiah's 20 now. Okay, so very nice. So at least one of them is 20 years old, so we're in the 20s there. A very, very young team to go out and do Dark Zone. They did do Godzone. They did great last year. They did even better this year. So, Fynn, I'll start with you and I'll pop over to Molly. Fynn, what was the big difference this year in your experience? How did you grow from last year to this year?
So this year we were a lot more structured around, like we had a much better plan in place around our sleep strategy and our caffeine strategy, and we're sort of this year we're racing a lot more to the mantra, I guess, of race against the course. So we were racing to we're trying to do the course as fast as we could rather than racing the people around us and just flying by the seat of our pants. So we're a lot more had a plan in place, knew how we wanted to race our race, knew where we needed to push and where we needed to sleep, and we're just a lot more structured. Like we weren't last year. We were sort of just flying by the seat of our pants, and we just slept when we were tired, and so we ended up blowing ourselves up. But this year we're a lot more structured and a lot more racing our own race.
Molly, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, basically Fynn summed it all up. We didn't really worry about the other teams as much as we did last year. So basically we were just going as fast as we could at our own speed, which actually worked well. And I suppose that's what you learn from doing more and more races like that.
And I would assume, too, that last year, being that it was your first time doing a race that big, there was an intimidation factor of the race, right? Because you've heard about Godzone, your family's been involved in Godzone. So the first time doing it, you might have been psychologically a little bit cowed by the course. You did great last year. You did really, really well. What was your confidence factor like, Fynn, going into year two?
I was pretty confident, especially because it was this year's Godzone was hosted in Fiordland, and it was in all the areas that are pretty much our training ground. So we were pretty confident, like we'd been over most of the terrain, and we knew that we're capable of doing the distances, and so a lot more confident just because it was a lot more familiar, and but also because I was a lot more organized and I know how to pack my food properly this year, and it was just a lot more of a smoother lead up to the race rather than having to ask around and ask people how to do stuff and how to pack stuff. Like we've got it sorted now, so it was just a lot more smooth.
So you had a lot of things going in your favor, right? You had done the race a year earlier, right? So you had broken through the first time revive. You broke through that. It was basically in your backyard, right? And so when you were handed the maps, how much of the course was familiar to you?
Pretty much all of it. Like there was only one section from Lake Monowai to Hiroko and the 70k Petcraft Trek League that I hadn't sort of pretty much done, and the rest I'd walked over most of it. So and also it helped that me and my dad had schemed at the maps for about a week leading up to it, and we'd pretty much picked the course off the logistics planner. So it was pretty familiar.
So Molly, I'm assuming going into the race, your confidence must have been really high, right? You know the course, you know your mates, you're feeling good. So going in, how nervous were you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very nervous and 1 being not nervous at all? How do you think the team was going into the race?
We didn't look nervous or feel nervous. I mean, the couple days before, our team was so confident that we knew the maps before we even got the maps, that we'd packed everything for that course. So it was quite awesome that our head was clear of the route and everything like that. So I was only a little bit nervous about how my feet were going to go, but I don't think we were nervous at all, which is always a good thing, but a little bit of nerves, obviously, but nothing too major.
So the race was 12 stages, right? And we're not going to go through each of the 12 stages, but I do want to talk about the highlights of the course. What were the what stages, and I have a list here. So I know after a race, you sometimes can't remember what happened. So I have the list handy here if you need me to remind you. I can't pronounce any of the names. I apologize to all my New Zealand friends, but I can certainly help prompt you along. Of the 12 stages, mountain bike, pack rafting, trekking, what jumped out at you as the stage where things were just really flowing? Like you felt really good, the team was bumping along and everything was sort of clicking. How deep into the race did you feel that?
You go, Fynn.
Probably about there was a 120k bike ride that from Hiroko to the base of the Tekatimus.
Mm-hmm. And that's stage 7, by the way, right? So stage 7. So you're over halfway through the race stage wise. Yeah, and we're feeling pretty good. Like we just come off quite a big, like probably the biggest leg of the race, or one of the biggest leagues of the race, the 70k Petcraft Trek League, and we just made up about 2 or 3 places that night, so we're all feeling pretty good, and everything was just clicking. We actually posted the fastest time on that 120k bike ride, so we just got into our groove, and we're all feeling pretty good at that stage, and we cranked out that league. Do you remember what day that was?
All feeling great.
How many days into the race was that? How many days into the race was that?
It must have been Monday, so about 3, 4.
Right, it's all a blur, right?
4.
Day 4.
What date was it? It was
Day 4.
Yeah, it was 2 nights. It was after 3 nights.
So you were in day 4.
So Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, so it was Sunday.
Yeah, it was Sunday. Yeah,
that was just everything, and all systems were going, right? You had that huge, the pack raft, by the way, was 70 kilometers, right? So a 70-kilometer pack raft to 120-kilometer mountain bike. Molly, did you feel the same way at that stage? You feel like things were clicking for you?
Yeah, the boys knew that area pretty well. I didn't know that we got first on that time for that ride, so that's pretty cool. I felt like that ride was pretty.
You got first, but Avaya's time includes their 4 hours sleep. So just putting into context.
Okay.
Well, but it is nice, Andy. Thanks for the clarification. It's great that at least Avaya and your names are being mentioned in the same breath, right? So that's a very nice. That's quite an honor. Okay.
Definitely. We were pretty buzzing once we'd passed a couple teams through the Hiroko. I think we'd passed 3 or 4 teams through the night, which was pretty cool because we thought we were getting bluffed out all the time, but obviously everyone else is getting bluffed out as well. So, we're feeling pretty good.
And Brian, the thing about that stage, and I'm just going to interject because I was down there waiting for them and watching dots, and that stage they mentioned, that pack raft stage. It was an extremely difficult stage. This is the stage that Estonia talks about, realizing how this race was different than a lot of the races that they're used to and that they were really excel in, and in terms of how difficult the terrain was. And I remember when we saw these guys coming in, they had this assumption that they'd lost a whole bunch of places. And it wasn't to them. It was when we saw Thought Sports, when we saw all of the top teams came in, they assumed that everybody else had a better line because their line was terrible. The fact is there was no good line. Like coming down off of those mountains, it was bluffs everywhere. And you either got lucky, which was a 1 in 100, thing, or you spent 5-6 hours moving a kilometer to try to get down to the bluffs. So when all the teams, when they found out that they hadn't lost that many places, it was usually good spirits.
So talk a bit about that, right? Because that's a nice thing, technically speaking, for our listeners to hear about. When you say come down off the bluffs, you mean getting cliffed out? Like eventually you were coming off the track and you couldn't descend any further down that? You had to go back up to descend more?
There was no track. So this is completely trackless wilderness. You're coming down off a ridge line where it was straightforward. You're moving down through the bush to get to the flat, the bush that's flat, and there is no clear way down. And bluffed out, means exactly that. You're coming down, and now you get to the top of bluffs, right? That you cannot carry on. And it's steep country, so a lot of times, if you get lucky, you can find a little cleft that you going through the bluffs. But it's you guys, it was you can speak to it because you were there. But I've been in that country, and it's not easy.
It's exactly what it was. It was just like we're pretty used to that country. So I was just thinking about the teams that have never been on sketchy country like that and how they were feeling. So no, we're pretty lucky that we're kind of used to, I suppose, that Fjordland country.
And so obviously there was a natural advantage you had because you've traveled on that before. And the teams that really struggled were teams that just had a hard time making that track and getting to the bottom of that. And so clearly you had a bit of a home advantage, was great and well earned and well deserved. As you made the transition over to the mountain bike and as the race continued, you mentioned before that was day 4 of the race. Like there were 3 nights. Fynn, when you opened up about last year, you said that your sleep strategy was different this year. What did you guys do differently?
Well, it was sort of more, there was a strategy. So last year we would sort of just make the call, we need to sleep now and we need about 3 hours or whatever. But this year our strategy was so sort of one sleep cycle. So set an alarm for 2.5 hours and then so you set aside 3 hours for your sleep. So that gave you a good 2.5 hours sleep. And then about half hours or about 15 minutes either side to set up your sleeping arrangement and pack up and get going again.
What did your sleep system look like? Did you have like Molly? Did you have a bivy bag? Did you sleep in a sleeping bag? Like what did you use to keep some contact between you and the ground?
Yeah, the first 2 or 3 sleeps were just basically on the ground with our sleeping bags. We just found some moss or something like that. The sleeping bags we have aren't that warm, so it was kind of not the best sleep, but still good enough. And then just before that last day, the last sleep, we were dark zoned on the dark zoned on the kayak just before the Ariti River. So we got beautiful mattresses in a camper van, so that was lovely.
So Molly, congratulations. Every time a guest uses the word dark zone in context, I mail them a dark zone sticker. So congratulations. That'll be going in the mail to you. I have to get your address after the show. So well done. Thank you for that. So that was a camper van and that must have been luxurious after being on the ground for that long.
Yeah, it was great.
How was the weather during the race? 8 days. How many different weather patterns did you see over 8 days?
One, sunny and tropical. We couldn't have really asked for better weather for the race. It was a wee bit cold the first night, but there'd been snow on the tops the night before the race had started. So it was just cold, but no, it was clear and warm the whole time. I actually got sunburnt quite badly.
Even I got sunburnt.
Bit niggly.
How did you change your? Now, I could appreciate your first year strategy of not really thinking a whole lot about it and just going out there and seeing what happens. And obviously, what happened was what happened. Now, to the question before, you mentioned your sleep strategy was different. How about your nutrition? What did you pack in for food? And remember last year, if I remember correctly, that trek was so long, you were on the verge of running out of food. So how did that work out for you this year?
Molly.
There you go, yeah.
We're a lot better organised this year because we had probably a more accurate time frame around how long each leg would take, so we could plan it out a lot more more accurately. Whereas last year we had sort of no idea. So what happened is we ran out of food. But and also this year the stages were sort of shorter, so you could get a lot more real food into you. You could get a lot more proper good food at transitions, and then you could take a wrap or something that would still be good for 5 hours. So you could actually run most of the race on proper food, and we didn't have to eat too much of the dehydrated stuff and your muesli bars and your typical race food that just gets hard on your guts after a wee while.
That makes such a difference, having access to real food.
Crew. Finn's mom was support crew with his her sister, so his aunt, and and they had made up with some of the other moms as well. Amazing, like what the flash wrapped or vacuum sealed, like lasagnas and all sorts of like real food that we just put in boiling water, and they just would go out of transition carrying this stuff and just suck it down, and it was a good system because it allowed them to transition fast. We had to work on the transitions a lot this year because last year, being their first year, there was a lot of worry. So there was 15 people in transitions, all lovely, wonderful people, well-meaning, just concerned about the well-being of their kids and their, nephews and nieces. But it was hard to have them transition fast. And the thing is that this team, they want to go fast, right? And it was really cool. We took photos of a lot of the transition boards. And, when they left, they were up in the top, 8 teams most of the race. And you see all these top 8 teams and these guys' transition times, they belong there, right? It was like, 19 minutes, 20 minutes, 23 minutes. It was all. And then later, if you go back and you look, then it starts to be 45 minutes, an hour. And so they're transitioning at the speed that all these top teams are, which is cool to see that they're so young. And I mean, it took us years to do that, like a decade to figure that out.
Right.
So it's a supported race, so it's different. So it will be really interesting to see in Africa. That will be their first real unsupported race. I guess True West was unsupported, but that's a 48-hour. So
we'll get to Africa in a little bit because I want to hear about how that's going to go down. I just want to point out that it is amazing how quickly time passes in a TA. It's amazing. Yeah. It's like, holy cow. So you look up and it's a half an hour, 45 minutes, and time just gets pulled all the way through. So good on all of you folks for getting out of there in one piece, getting out of there quickly. I do want to comment. I love the fact that I think this is not exclusive to New Zealand, but it's definitely a New Zealand thing as well. The fact that the families all came out. Like the moms made the meals, they cooked it. Like in America, if a parent cuts up orange slices and brings it to like the soccer game that's an hour long, they think they're a hero. And here, your parents like basically stopped their days and like cooking full meals for you at all those transitions. How did it feel having your families just so behind you during the race? Was that like, did that help make you want to go faster to make them happy, or were you concerned that they were too worried about you during the race? Like, tell me about the family dynamic during the race, because you don't see that a whole lot.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see just how invested everyone around, like all your friends and your family had gotten into the race. Like even I had quite a few mates that came out to each transition. They just helped out, like the support crew. They filled our drink bottles and stuff. Just everyone wanted to help us out, and just random people on the course. Like there's random people that I sort of know, like they'd set up food stands and they'd be out at their gate with muffins and stuff. Just everyone in the community wanted to help us out. So it's pretty cool to see how much everyone gets behind you.
What do you think, Molly?
Yes, we had the best support group ever. They were amazing. I mean, I was going to say with the question before, we hardly had any freeze-dried meals. Like I bought all these freeze-dried meals to eat, and we were actually pretty good. All our timings was basically in transition at dinner or lunchtime, so we were pretty. That was pretty good for support crew and us, to be fair. But no, so my family's not from Fiordland, so I didn't get my mum and dad coming until maybe the last day. So, but it was pretty cool to see all Fynn's friends. I swear there was about 50 of them just at the finish line, just cheering them on. And I mean, we had to stop at every single food stall to say thank you. I don't think Andy was very impressed with that. We had to, the boys, I think they ate about 10 muffins on the last stage of the bike ride. But it was pretty cool.
Was there Venus was in your community, Fynn, and your other friends too. Was there any energy like in the media? Did your schools know about it? Did they talk about it? Or would you just like leave school, go race and go back and be like, hey, where were you? Would you have strep throat? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, no, my school actually did. I don't know how. Well, they must have been following it because, they put in their newsletter and stuff and put a bit of a post up on Facebook. And then, I don't know, somehow the radio got wind of it because me and Molly were sitting at the house just listening to the radio just at the day before Godzone actually, and then the radio comes up and they're talking about Godzone, and then they start talking about me because I'm from Invercargill. It's just the Invercargill radio station. So I don't know they've found out. But yeah, it's pretty cool to see how big of a spread the event has and like how many people follow it. Because yeah, even all my teachers and stuff, they were all tracking me right the way through. It's pretty cool.
How great for you too that you were so successful in the all of that, right? All of that attention and your mates coming out and your friends there and your family. And here you're clearly inside the top 10, right? You were in 7th place. Andy, how did this impact them during the race?
Well, you mean the media and
just the energy, just the general energy around them. Because some races you leave and you don't know a single person and you're racing in a foreign country and nobody knows you. This was an interesting dynamic for them.
So I think that there's pluses and minuses, Brian. Like I think on the one hand, it is awesome because you having that fan base and having that support buoys your spirits, right? And so when you come in and Molly was suffering a lot on the last big trek leg. She'd banged her knee on the first trek leg, and by the time we got to the last one, she'd had major swelling. She couldn't bend it, and there was a lot of worry. Like I remember talking to Adam Fairmaid, one of the race directors, as she left. And he was just like shaking his head, like she can't even bend her legs. She's screwed.
Yeah, you saw that. I came across one of the race videos. I was home, Molly. I was rooting for you at home. And credit to you. And like you hung in there, Molly. Like they were interviewing you, and you were being brave and being strong. But you could tell that it was really bothering you. But we'll get back to you in a second. Andy, keep going.
And so I think that there's a lot of benefit to having that support. I think that this year was a lot better because it was. We were able to know how to direct that. So as a support crew, we were able to tell the people that wanted it, because it's interesting. Everybody wants to come in and interact, but the team they need to basically stay focused. If every time you come into the transition, you explode and you're unfocused, it's much harder, right? And so it was finding the balance between allowing that support to be constructive and beneficial. And I think we did a pretty good job. Like, there'd be groups just with banners and they'd cheer for them on the way in. It was interesting because the other teams, I think, sometimes felt a little jealous and because there's these big mobs of people. And we did get a couple times, at one point we got told that, hey, you're only supposed to have two supporters because every team was, and it's not like, I don't think that was an advantage to the team. It was almost harder. You got like 10 people around. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that, because people want to help. Right. And so towards the end, we have to tell people, no, you have to stay away, just say hello. Because there were a couple of TAs at the end that they were really strict. And they're like, nope. If the third person is carrying their bike bottle, that's not allowed. So by the end, we just, and but it's one of those things where they're clearly locals and they've got so much sport and they're young, right? They're a fun team to root for,
right?
Which is pretty neat. And I mean, it's the thing I always think about is a young team in adventure racing is a combined age of under 110. Like that's considered a young team,
right? And
these guys had a combined age of 75,
right?
It's not even really in the same category.
So I'm doing some quick math here just so we can point it out to you. 3, 6, 7, 8, 12. The combined age of my team, 6, 12. Yep. The combined age of my team in Scotland 2 years ago was 228.
Yeah.
We got a photo with this team right at the start, and they were just in awe of us. Was it 3 times our age that their team was? Was it 3 times, Fynn?
Yeah,
that's exactly right. 228 is the same thing. That's Brian's team with 228. So 225 would be 3 times your age. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Molly, if I saw you on the course and I stopped you, I'd stop. I'd take a picture with you. It would be great. I would then take your packet and throw it in the bushes. I just have to tell you, I would feel obligated to do that because you're so young. I probably wouldn't do that. But you know what I mean? So yeah, so clearly the combined age is 75. There's an advantage there. And to your point, Andy, people root for each other. For adventure racing, everybody roots for each other very, very strongly, right? You don't see a whole lot of cutthroat. You do it at the pointy end of the race. It belongs there. It should be there, right? Teams are fighting for podium spots. But once you come a bit back off that very, very, very front of the race, there's this camaraderie that we're all in this together. Local kids, a younger team. There's no doubt that the race was rooting for you. That was very, very obvious. And it sounds like that energy meant a lot to you, whether it be 30 people in transition. It still was a really powerful moment for the two of you. Now, this has been a great love fest of an experience, but it had to get hard sometime. Molly, I'm going to guess it was your leg. We'll come back to you in a second. Fynn, what was your low point? Where did the race have? Was it really difficult for you?
My low point was probably I'd have to say the last beach run was probably the hardest physically. Like I was the sorest. I probably wasn't sorer than Molly, but I was pretty slow. I had one ankle that sort of had blown right up. I just got a bit of tendonitis or something in my shin, but probably it'd have to be. Oh, actually, the first leg across Tarawa, we got a little bit lost in the times, and just well, it was still early on in the race, but just the feeling of shit, we've ballsed it up already. Where this is all going downhill, like that stuff. That sort of stuff just starts creeping into your mind, and you gotta shut it out. But yeah, that was probably a.
Because to your point, the race just started, you're full of energy, enthusiasm, and here you are in the beginning and the maps are all upside down and you're frustrated and people are looking for you. So it's interesting how your psychological point came really early in the race and your physical point, because I think you're mentioning that the 15K trek at the beach, which is at the very, very end of the race, was your challenging point. You had to deal with those two things. What was your strategy for getting on track mentally after that first bobble?
You just gotta keep in your head, like it's such a long race. Like you can get so caught up in what's happening that hour and that day even. But yeah, you've just got to keep reminding yourself that it's such a long race, and actually it's that doesn't even matter. They're tiny gains and tiny losses that in the scheme of things. But yeah, you've just got to keep reminding yourself that, because you can get so caught up in that and get so far into that pit if you lose half an hour, you can just kick yourself over it, and it just skews you mentally. So I just had to keep reminding myself it's a long race, and just slow down, sort yourself out, and keep going.
It's a bit of in bicycle racing, there's an expression that says you can't win the race in the beginning, but you can lose it.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Molly, what was your low point?
Yeah, my low point would definitely be my knee playing up. That was quite it was pretty sore. I couldn't really bend my leg from the start of the tackies, so that 55K trek. I don't know what stage it was, but
stage 8.
Yeah.
A lot of the race ahead of you.
Yeah, no, so I couldn't really bend my knee. We didn't have that strong painkillers for that leg, so I got on quite strong painkillers after there, and so that would definitely be my low point. But overall the race, we didn't have very many when everyone was I didn't really notice anyone being super, super low, which was good. And I suppose that's just what our strategy was. I mean, we tried to not be low overnight. I mean, I usually get hallucinations, and I didn't get any hallucinations this time. And I mean, I got tired a few times, but nothing major, which was good.
What was your longest for the entire team? What was the longest time you were awake at any one given shot? How many hours?
It would have been from day one. So the race started at 3 p.m. So I got up at like 7. So that's 10 hours. And then we didn't go to sleep until not that night, but the next night at 2 a.m. So however many hours, that was 30-something hours.
Yeah, 7 to 7 is 24, right? An additional 7 to is 36. So you're up towards about over 40 hours.
Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah, 43 hours. Wow, that's a long time to be awake. Yeah. Did I do the math right?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
There you go.
So the story I'll tell you about the tackies that they won't tell you, that they told me, but I'll share it with you, is there was, and I think this is an interesting insight into who Molly is as a person, is that there's a conversation, and I might not get it right, you guys can correct me, that we were told about on Titaroa, where where Josiah, Dean, and Fynn were talking about all what they were going to do now that they were giving up adventure racing, because they were just like, all right, we're done with this, and I think one of them was going to do golf, and one of them was going to do croquet or something. They were just like, they were done with it, right? Just you go through that, and they were asking Molly, like, what are you going to do? And she's like, no, I'm loving this. And like they're suffering, like they've been out, and I'm familiar with that. I've done that almost in every race I've ever done. Had the point, this is it, I'm done.
Right.
What am I doing this for? And what are all the things I'm going to do with my time now that I'm not going to be adventure racing? And Molly was having none of it. She was like, no, this is exactly what I want to be doing. And the boys,
well, that's always a barometer that the race is going well. When you quit during the race, but you don't quit. And if that's a sign that you're working really hard, right?
That it actually is. For me, that's a sign, but not for Molly. She there's a different sign for her. Like she's suffering, and she's like, this is exactly where I want to be. So she's unique in that sense.
Sally, Molly, was the knee pain due to an injury, or is just overuse? You banging on something? Like where do they come from?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it came from, I fell pretty hard on it on Mount Titiroa. I don't think the boys actually knew that I fell.
That's stage 3, by the way.
Yeah, so the first day of the race. And then I suppose just that fall, and then just keep walking on it and keep biking on it and stuff like that. It just got a bit annoying, and then it started getting quite sore, and then it just basically locked up on me. So that... Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, yeah. I don't think it was an overuse injury. I've never kind of had that before. So, yeah.
Also, you're 19, so probably hurt for like 30 minutes after the race, and then you're fine. Right?
Yeah, she was.
Did it stick around for a few days?
It's still here.
It's still there.
Okay. Yeah. I've been able to bike, and I've been able to do the elliptical, but I haven't been able to run on it yet, which is annoying, but yeah, it'll get better.
I think there was some ligament bruising and a deep bone bruise. So there's definitely a traumatic component to it. And then obviously, adventure racing is always an overuse injury, Brian. So there's like, the entire process is
it's one big long overuse injury.
Managing an overuse injury as long as you can and as effectively as you can. So, the combination of it seems like, because it was only on the one leg, we guess that the damage then exacerbated by not being able to reduce the swelling.
Gotcha. So Andy, as someone who was pretty much on the outside looking in, and you were, it's for supporters during a race, it's an endurance event for them too. Mm-hmm. When did your radar go up at any point during the race that you felt that the team might have been not falling apart, not the right word to use, but they were starting to get a little raw, they were emptying out a little bit. When did you feel that?
So I mean, it's always exciting. I've never been able to be good at pacing myself during the beginning of a race, and so it was really exciting to see that they came out of the gates and they decided that, because they led for the first stage, which was a very short stage. They were right up front. They were to the transition 3 or 4 minutes in front of all the next teams, and they managed to stay ahead on the paddle of all the teams except for Avaya that passed them in that classic video, which we've been told that Avaya was putting on a bit of a show, so it wasn't their normal paddling speed, but fair enough. And so that was pretty cool. Like, they were just pushing hard. And so then I can understand from Fynn's perspective when you're right at the very, very pointy end, and then you make that mistake and you slip back into the mid, because I think you guys probably slipped back to 12th or 13th place at that point on the mistake on Titiroa. That's frustrating. But so it's really cool to hear these guys talk about how they took that in stride, because you have to, right? Otherwise, you're done before you're really beginning. So that was really cool. There's a level of maturity there that's exciting. But for me, to answer your question, I had about 24 hours where I was miserable because I stopped checking the tracking, and this is after they started the Titiroa trek, or not Titiroa, the Takitimu trek. When I saw Molly walk away. And I was pretty confident, but then I heard that Adam Fairmaid was really worried, and other people were coming and saying, "Oh, she just looks horrible." She's never going to make it. And so I just, I mean, and not in a negative way, but just like, wow, like,
Yeah.
I can't believe she's carrying on. She can't bend her leg kind of thing. And she's got this 55-kilometer trek up and over 4 mountains. And I just remember not being able to sleep that night. And then when I finally did get to sleep, just trying to sleep as long as I could, because I was imagining a repeat of last year and how gutting that was going to be for the team. And it felt very much like that. Like, because last year I remember watching Zach, who was suffering horribly, like, and it was a morning instead of an evening when they left the TA, and just limping away with his poles, and just like, here's the walking wounded, and this task in front of him is really insurmountable. And they weren't able to pull through last year, right? It just got too bad, and he couldn't carry on, and they got the heli. And that's what I just imagined, like, shit, this is going to happen again. And I remember that morning I'd slept in because I was really tired. I hadn't got a lot of sleep until that point. And, I got a text from a buddy of mine who was a fan of these guys and was watching the race, and said, "What's going on with Fear Youth?" And it was a screenshot of the tracking map. And there was a little black star in the corner, because that's what you do when you favorite a team, so that you can find them easier.
Right.
But there's a little black line on teams when they are unranked, because they have lost a member. And so when I just open this up and I just glance at the screenshot, and I see this black, this number 9 with the black thing, and I'm like, I just about threw my phone across the room, because I thought, this is it's happened. And then I calmed down and realized, okay, but they'd stopped moving. So I was, as a supporter who just really wants them to succeed and knows how hard they've worked and what they're capable of. And yeah, it's funny sitting here saying, oh, it was really hard on me.
Well, yeah. I mean, and to your point, I mean, hard's a relative term, right? And the difficulty felt by an in-race transition support crew of the racer, because you wrap yourselves up in their success. And I will argue, too, with all due respect to our guests and their ages, I think that when they're on the younger side, there's a greater level of investment. Right. Because we root for kids. We want them to do well. We want them to succeed. And it's also a good lesson for the listeners out there that wait until there's double verification on a tracker error. Right. Wait until that someone is telling you in live, because you watch races sometime and you think that a team's completely walked off into the wilderness. And meanwhile, the tracker auto corrects and everything is fine. But that was really something else. And I think it's just also like not being able to when you're. They probably, like, I've watched video that Molly had a GoPro, and I've since seen video of that trek, and they were, if I'd have been privy to that, to even a snippet of that video during that period of anxiety, I wouldn't have had any worries, because they were moving slower. They were supporting Molly. She was pushing, and they were just like they said earlier, they were just doing their race. They were racing their race. They knew they couldn't move as fast. They weren't worried about trying to keep up with, that 4th and 5th place team that they had been with, because they knew they were going to be, and they were smiling and laughing and making jokes. And yeah, Molly was suffering, but seeing that, I knew they weren't about to drop out. But at the time, you don't know it. You can't do anything. You're just sitting there, and you imagine the worst. It's terrible. I hate it. Yeah, I'd much rather have unsupported races where you just get to sit back and just. Yeah. So at that point, when you get towards the end of the race, were you, I don't know how many transition areas were left and you interact with them, but were you trying to get them in that transition really quick so that they had no chance to pause and think about where they were? Like, just, this is great, guys, keep rolling.
The thing is that I was trying to support what they wanted, and they wanted to keep racing. And that was, it was really cool. They never settled in. They were always in touch. There was always a possibility. It was never like, 4 hours to the next place, 4 hours in front of the place behind them, right? So they were always in this position where it was motivating for them to keep that edge, still be safe and be conservative and not blow up, but as it got close to the end, like, it was cool to see that they still had that fire, and they were still talking when they came into TA and they were tired. Like, okay, we need to get out, and if we do this in this time, we'll we'll be in and we'll be this far behind this team. Like they didn't end up catching any teams, but they never, it wasn't because they gave up, right? They kept trying to move. Like Fynn said, they were racing the course. They were saying, how fast can we do this? Right.
And so you never had a moment in transition. Did you ever pick up any tension with the team during transition, or were they were good with each other?
No, there was some tension, but it's pretty normal. I think that everybody deals with it differently, and that's one of the things that they will get better at as they go, and supporting each other better as they go. I mean, they haven't. There's not a lot of experiences like adventure racing where everybody's at their worst at some point. It pushes everybody, and the way people deal with that is some people retreat inwardly, some people get mad and project, and that's no different with kids than it is with adults. It's a crucible for figuring out who you are and then how you deal with other people when you're at your worst.
Yep. And I think that's a huge thing for the listener out there to talk about, that during race experiences, and regardless of the distance, right? It could be long, it could be short. There's always going to be that tension inside the team. And how do you manage that? Right? Because I don't know of any teams that just sort of skate through the whole thing. And some teams eat themselves alive. They cannibalize each other during the race. And some teams have a chance to go pass through it. So while we've been working hard here, we have to give Fynn credit. Fynn was kind enough to sit in the front seat of the car for a while, and now he disappeared off camera, and he's now back on wearing his wetsuit. So I think that Fynn is sending the message that this has been great. Dark Zone, it's nice talking to you, but the beach is calling. So I want to begin to wrap things up a little bit, and you've been excellent guests. I heard the word Africa before. What are the plans there?
The plan is we're wanting to send a youth team to Africa for the World Champs, and so just pretty much go there and get our first international racing experience and have a dig at, hopefully, I don't know, making some waves at the World Champs.
Molly, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Teenagers take on Africa, which is pretty cool, but we won't be seeing we haven't even told the story, but the bluffs that we were talking about, a deer jumped off that bluff and basically killed itself on the bluff. We won't be seeing deer, but we will be seeing like elephants and giraffes and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool.
Did you ever think that your sport would take you to Africa? You ever think that would happen?
Yeah. I knew that it was an international sport, and there's races all over the world. So I knew one day we were going to get to overseas, but I didn't know it was going to be this fast. But yeah, it's pretty exciting that you're going to Africa.
Well, I think when you come in seventh at Godzone, I think that you feel pretty good about your chances in Africa. Andy, going into that race, what are your thoughts about training and preparation for a race of that distance and that time?
So it's interesting because there's no pack rafting. A lot of adventure races have adopted pack rafting, but in Africa, there's no pack rafting. These kids are awesome at pack rafting. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. They're good at the transitions, and so they understand pack rafting. They've been doing. I mean, they've been introduced to adventure racing through pack rafting largely. And Molly kind of coming on and following because I've trained a lot of the boys in pack rafting, and Molly through the early races she's done with them, the Wilderness Traverse of Fjordlands, all involve pack rafting, and so she's upschooled very quickly as well. And so they all do very well with that. And so not having that in the race is going to be not great for them, but they're all great bikers. They do really well on bike stages, and it's a bike heavy race. So that's good. They've got some good bike mechanics. So Josiah is not going to be joining them on Africa because he's got exams. So Josh Pearson, one of the twins, is going to be joining them in Africa. And he's a phenomenal bike mechanic, and he's a great biker. So that's going to be a strength of their team. They're going to be able to do all their own stuff, do transitions quickly. And we're going to get them, the goal is to get them spending the next 6 months doing some specific paddle training. Because if they have a discipline where they're weakest at, it's probably paddling. And also in AR, everybody's weaker at paddling. So basically it's probably the place where they can make the biggest gains and we've got some coaches down in Southland and some places for them to do some training up where Molly and Josh are. And just to kind of get, paddling is one of those things where if you do training on that without gaining fitness, you can get a 10% speed increase just by knowing how to paddle better.
Right. It's one of these.
So hoping to begin that, and it's going to serve them well throughout their adventure racing career. Anyway, so.
It looks like Finn's on the way to the water. Fynn, closing thoughts before we say goodbye.
What's that? Sorry.
You're on the way to the water. Any closing thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you very much for having us on. It's cool to share our story with you guys. But hopefully might even end up in America.
Molly, take us home. Final thoughts.
Yeah, no, we're pretty excited coming off the back of Godzone, and always exciting to do bigger and better things, which is awesome. And so thank you very much for supporting us throughout.
Once again, thank you to Team Fear Youth for coming on the show. I'm sure many of you caught Molly's good-natured chuckle when she learned how old my team in Scotland was. God bless these kids. They're doing a great job representing their country and their families, and they are an inspiration to all of us out there who are swinging away. We wish them all the best at the World Championships in Africa, and we'll bring them back to you once again. They're a lot of fun and always good to talk to. This has been another episode of The Dark Zone. We appreciate your time and your attention. If you like what you hear, please head over to the streaming platform of choice and like and add and do all sorts of fun things with that. If you want to reach out to me directly, feel free to do so. Brian, Brian, at ardarkzone.com. That's right, Brian at ardarkzone.com. Be great to hear from you. Thank you for all the listeners. We are growing in membership and in numbers, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. All the best.
All right then. Who likes to rock the party? Now, it gives me great pleasure and pride to introduce two of the coolest New Zealanders I have ever met. Our very own Flight of the Conchords!
Thank you. I'd like to rock the party.
Party going on.
And it looks like it might suck.
I'm a nip you.
Yeah, what's the hair gel, guys? Sorry.
We're not cool?
No.